today we're taking flight with the live-action How to Train Your Dragon, the much-anticipated 2025 adaptation. It's bringing dragons and Vikings to life in, well, a whole new way. From dragon designs to how the actors trained, we've got a deep dive that'll take you sky high into its production. So yeah, we're really digging into this new live-action How to Train Your Dragon 2025 release. It feels like a huge undertaking, doesn't it? Taking that beloved animated world and, making it live action. What's our main goal here, our mission for digging into this specific adaptation?
Well, what's really fascinating, I think, is Dean DeBlois coming back, the director who did the original animated trilogy. His decision to return for this, it's significant, especially since he's been pretty open about not loving remakes in the past. So our mission today, let's unpack the magic, the emotion, the wonder of this familiar story, but focusing on the changes, the production details, the behind-the-scenes stuff that makes this one unique. How do they bring Berk back to life without, losing what made it special?
That sounds like a great plan. Because, yeah, at its heart, the film is described as a familiar adventure. It's got Hiccup, Toothless, the Berk Warriors, telling the same overarching story.
Yeah.
Hiccup, the nerdy Viking kid, makes friends with the Night Fury, tries to change the whole dragon fighting thing. So for listeners who love the original, that's comforting, but maybe a bit like, okay, what's new? How do they keep it fresh if they're sticking close to the story? What's the secret?
Right, that's the key question. The core story is familiar, yeah, but the tone, that's where you see a big shift. This live-action version, it goes for a slightly darker tone. The world feels grittier. And the dragons themselves, reportedly a bit scarier than the animated ones, which makes sense, right? Live action lets you push that visceral feel, make it more impactful, raise the stakes a bit. And it's also the first of a planned trilogy of these remakes. So they're really investing in this more grounded vision.
That darker, grittier tone.
That's really interesting, especially when you think about the actors bringing these characters to life. Mason Thames is playing Hiccup. That's a lot of pressure, isn't it? Following Jay Baruchel's voice work, how does his performance change Hiccup for this new world? Oh, absolutely. It's a huge challenge. Baruchel's voice was Hiccup for so many people. Very iconic but cartoony, tied to the animation style. Thames, from what we gather, brings a much more realistic manner to it, something better suited to the live-action medium. People might need a minute to adjust, maybe a few scenes. But the word is, Thames gives this really endearing performance worthy of the character. He makes it his own, more through acting than just the voice, which fits that darker, grittier feel we were talking about.
Okay, and staying on casting. Nico Parker as Astrid. That definitely stirred up some conversation online. Astrid's such a fan favorite, and it sounds like her character gets some interesting development, too.
Yes, absolutely. Dean DeBlois, the director, specifically wanted to broaden and deepen characters who maybe felt underserved in the animated movie, just due to time limits, And Astrid was a key one. He wanted to give characters like her more depth this time around, explore more of their personality, maybe some backstory we didn't get before. So it suggests like a richer emotional landscape overall.
Right.
Now, about that conversation you mentioned, there was definitely some intense backlash about Nico Parker's casting, specifically because she doesn't have Astrid's, blonde hair and blue eyes from the animation. How did they handle that? Parker herself and the filmmakers. What does that whole situation tell us about adapting these characters?
Yeah, that was noticeable. And it does raise questions about adaptation and expectations. Nico Parker's response was pretty direct, actually. She said something like, "If I wouldn't value your opinion on most things in life, I can't value your opinion on my hair." And then she talked about the importance of mixed race or black icons in cinema, hoping her role opens doors, shifts focus away from just looks. Dean DeBlois backed her up, too. Defended the casting, saying the vision was about performance and character, not just copying the animation visually for live action. And it seems like her performance really won people over. There was this comment, just Nico was Astrid. Simple as that. Seems like it worked on screen. That's good to hear. And beyond Hiccup and Astrid, it's great they got Gerard Butler back as Stoic. That continuity is nice. Plus new faces like Nick Frost joining the cast. But bringing these characters and this world to life, it's more than just casting, right? It's the whole production magic. And that's where things get really interesting, especially with the director.
Totally. And DeBlois' return is, like I said, kind of unconventional. He wrote and directed the animated trilogy, yeah. But he'd also called remakes lazy before. He even made a point of saying he wasn't involved in the Lilo and Stitch live action.
Yeah.
So him coming back for this, it feels like a statement. Like he's really committed to this story. He apparently expressed relief when the early reactions were positive, acknowledging how protective people are of these movies. They didn't want to see the trilogy messed with.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels less like a studio mandate and more like his artistic evolution of his own work, which is pretty rare for remakes, honestly.
Okay, and then the dragons, especially Toothless. For so many fans, he is the heart of it all. How do the live-action dragons stack up? Can they be scarier but still, toothless, still endearing?
It sounds like they've walked that tightrope pretty well.
Yeah.
Sources are saying the CGI dragons are the most authentic and realistic-looking aspects of the film by a massive margin, which, again, feeds into that grittier tone, makes them feel more like real, wild creatures. But here's the key thing. Toothless is unchanged from the original in his actual design. It's just rendered with higher fidelity. So like every scale, every little twitch, super detailed, makes him feel tangible, but still himself. It's that blend of heartfelt storytelling with cutting-edge visual effects they seem to be nailing, creating a real Toothless. Obviously, the dragons are animated using CGI. That's a given for live action. But it sounds like the tech really unlocks so much potential. It's quite an achievement, apparently.
And it's not just the dragons that are tangible. They actually built Berk. Like a physical Viking village set was constructed in Northern Ireland. What does doing that add when so much is digital anyway?
Oh, yeah. A proper physical set. It makes a huge difference. It grounds everything, gives the actors real spaces to interact with, makes their performances feel more real, helps anchor all that CGI dragon stuff in a believable world. That physical presence is key for the whole grittier feel we keep coming back to. And speaking of things that ground the movie emotionally, John Powell, he's back. The composer from the animated films is scoring this one too, which is massive for keeping that emotional core, that franchise identity.
Oh, wow. John Powell's score, it's just legendary, isn't it? One of the best parts of the original. But bringing it to live action, is there a risk it sounds maybe too much like the animation? Or doesn't quite fit the new look?
That's definitely a fair question. But reports say the soundtrack, doesn't dither whatsoever in getting reacquainted with the iconic sound of the series. It jumps right back in. Powell's managed to evolve it, though. You get those noble brass notes of the fantastic flying theme straight away and the playful theme for Berk. Tracks like A Really Forbidden Friendship. They're basically recreations, but with new orchestral and stylistic additions. So they feel fresh, but still familiar. And Test Driving Toothless apparently have this refined and impeccably grandiose brass sound that just makes the music simply soars, gives those big moments even more punch. There are some differences, apparently some new vocals that maybe didn't land perfectly for everyone in certain spots. But overall, the score has a slicker, refined feel. It's noticeably modernized. Sounds like it fits the new visuals while keeping that all-important emotional connection.
Okay, so we've hit the big stuff. The director's vision, the cast, the amazing effects, that incredible score. But sometimes it's the little details, the behind-the-scenes facts that really make you appreciate a film more. Let's dig into some of those. Starting with a new origin story for Berk itself.
Yeah, this is really interesting. There's a moment where Stoic reveals that the warriors of Berk aren't just one tribe. He says they're an amalgamation of many different clans from all around the world. And he specifically mentions people from the Far East, the Silk Road, and the coasts of Africa. It's not just a throwaway line. It gives a believable reason for the clan's diversity, which you see reflected in the casting. And honestly, it's a much cooler origin story than we ever got in the animations. It neatly explains the diverse look of Berk and just makes the world feel bigger, more interesting, a bit more cosmopolitan maybe.
That really does add a cool new dimension. Makes Berk feel less isolated, perhaps. And speaking of Stoic, his whole approach to fighting dragons gets an update too. More strategic this time.
Seems like it. In this version, Stoic does indeed have a strategy to defeat the dragon nest. He actually brings siege weapons, which is quite different from the original animation, where he often just seemed to charge in, all fury, not much of a plan. This change gives Stoic more credit as a leader, a strategist. Even if the plan still goes wrong in the end, it adds a layer of competence, makes the struggle feel a bit more calculated, maybe more tragic.
Interesting. And another character tweak, smaller maybe, but sounds impactful, Fish Legs. He's apparently different with Hiccup in this version. What does that suggest about the kids' dynamic?
Right. And yeah, it sounds like a subtle but telling shift. Fish Legs is described as far friendlier. And get this. He actually tries to get involved during Hiccup's fateful first kill, leaning through the fence trying to help him.
Yeah.
That's not just a small change in personality. It suggests a greater sense of acceptance for Hiccup from the others way earlier on. It also maybe points to a softening of the Brook bullies compared to the original, where Hiccup was really on the outer, could change the whole social dynamic, maybe lead to Hiccup finding his place a bit quicker.
Okay, now for something very 21st century movie making. A post-credit scene, that little extra bit at the very end. We hear there's one here that isn't in the original movie. What's the scoop?
Ah, yes, the post-credit scene. This one sounds a bit odd, actually. The scene is apparently just Hiccup placing his drawing of Toothless onto the blank Night Fury page in the Dragon Manual. And that's it. It's described as a strange inclusion because it reportedly neither teases future stories nor does it add any new context.
Yeah.
It's just kind of replaying an emotional moment from earlier in the film,
Mhm.
which is weird for a post-credits slot, right?
Right.
Usually it's a tease or a joke. It's almost like they felt they had to have one. What do you make of that?
Huh. That is strange. Usually, like you said, it's a cliffhanger or a gag. To just show an earlier quiet moment, maybe it's meant as a final reflective beat, a nod to the heart of the story rather than pushing for what's next. Could be a deliberate choice to just let the film resonate.
Interesting. And one last fun fact, Dean DeBlois apparently had a favorite scene he was really keen to recreate from the original. Which one? He was apparently really excited about recreating the scene of Hiccup's graduation day in the arena. Right. He talked about how important that scene is for Hiccup and Astrid's relationship, how it shows her deciding to support him no matter the cost of her own ambitions. Cool. It's that big turning point where they move from rivals to allies, where she really sees him. That emotional weight clearly stuck with DeBlois.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for us, the audience, getting ready to go back to Burke's? You've got these changes, Burke's diverse origin, deeper characters, the director's personal stake, these incredibly real dragons. This deep dive really makes you consider how we retell stories we love for new audiences, doesn't it? Is success about sticking super close to the original? Is it about smart updates? Or is it that tricky mix of both, finding new meaning in the familiar? It's a lot to think about. And that wraps our flight with How to Train Your Dragon. If you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes journey, follow the deep dive and share it with your fellow film explorers. We'll be back soon with more insights, more movie magic, and yeah, maybe a few dragon roars. Keep your wings steady and your curiosity aloft.